been an activist throughout her whole life, and as a leader of several organizations, including president and founder of the SoCal chapter of the United Nations National Committee of UN Women. She has helped make changes in equality around the world. She was even part of the UN's delegation to go to Cuba, the first Americans in a long, long time. And we are so gracious to have her with us. And with that being said, we'd love to invite CeCe Sloan up here. Hi!
I'm glad I made it, but I'm much smarter now. See, if I had come early, I wouldn't have known all the things that I just learned in these two panels, which was so great. I congratulate the panelists. They were marvelous. Even at my age, I can always learn a little about how to grow gracefully, I guess. So happy International Women's Day. I notice there are some people wearing red. For instance, Michelle has got the red eye for that day. I'm a black and white person, so I didn't pull out the red today. But I'm happy to be here. It's great to see all of you. And I'm going to briefly talk about the history of International Women's Day. Was that covered before I came, by the way?
No.
Okay. Well, it started back in the early 1900s. 1909, in fact, was the first time that they celebrated. It was actually called Women's International Working, or International Women's Working Day. And it was celebrating, the unions were celebrating workers, and that was in 1909, and within a couple of years, it became more official because of the very tragic experience of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory in New York City, where 167 women were burned to death in a fire. And it was at that time that New York really got excited about making working women more important and more protected. And the day started, it wasn't March 8th, that didn't happen until years later. A lot of this is under the UN. The UN did most of International Women's Day because it involves so many countries. It's global. And it's better now than ever. There are much more marches. I've been running International Women's Day from my UN chapter for a really long time. And what I did was not covers too much about the history of it, but my favorite thing is to meet women who are artists, writers, painters, filmmakers, whatever, and have them tell us how their voice is expressed in the work that they create. That the creative part of them is what speaks out, and often they use their art to send their messages about that. So next I want to get to a comment, I guess, that you must have heard during the last campaign, and that is that human rights are women's rights, and women's rights are human rights. And it was spoken by Hillary Clinton, of course. And I heard her in 1995 at the Beijing conference. I went to the next Beijing conference, and that was in 1995. The second Beijing conference was actually in New York, and it was called Beijing Plus 15, and it was 2010 at the UN. And it was one of the greatest experiences of my life, because even though I waited 2 hours to get clearance and have my photo taken, I did get into the General Assembly. And there were all the ministers from all the countries talking about what they were doing in their country for women. And those rights, I mean, actually, if you go back 47, 48, well, to 1948, there was another First Lady, and that First Lady was Eleanor Roosevelt. And with Eleanor Roosevelt, what we got was the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And those are the rights that included everyone has the right to enjoy all the benefits of their lives in their country, and this included international, of course. And no matter, well, I'll read it, okay? May I? So basically, ratifying the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which states that all enjoy human rights and fundamental freedoms without distinction of any kind, such as race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, birth, or any other status. So that was in 1948, where women were heavily discriminated, and of the original 51 members, country members of the UN, only 25 of those states had women voting at that time, equally to men, or people voting equally, depending upon color and language. And so what is our work? What does UN Women do? Well, first and foremost for me is always working to end violence against women. I mean, that is what keeps women back. That's the prejudice, the worst prejudice that keeps women down. Commitment to gender equality, peace and security, leadership and participation, economic empowerment, and national planning and budgeting. Unfortunately, the U.S. government has failed in two ways with international equality and anti-discrimination. One is CEDAW, which is a convention to eliminate discrimination, all forms of discrimination against women and girls. That was put together in 1979 by Jimmy Carter. 185 countries signed and ratified it, except for 5 countries, and the U.S. is one of those countries. They have never signed it, ratified it. They just feel they are definitely not discriminating against women here, so they don't have to sign it. And it takes 2/3 of the vote of the Senate. The Senate requires 16 votes to pass a convention, which is also known as a treaty. And it's never gotten more than 60 votes. It comes up every few years. So what happened was San Francisco and the UN got together and decided there would be cities for CEDAW. And San Francisco is a fully anti-discrimination against women city. Eric Garcetti did the same thing a couple of years ago in LA. Long Beach has put this together. I don't know whether it's signed. I know it was ratified. I don't know whether it's signed. My city, Laguna Woods, is a fully ratified and signed CEDAW city. And they're working all over the country now, women, to get this happening. And it's difficult. You have to meet with mayor. You have to find out what the crime rates are in these cities, what abuses happen, domestic violence, and stuff like that. But it is happening. So women have taken that stand. Just because their country doesn't want to become anti-discrimination, they're going to have the cities do it. And I think I'll just finish up with, I got mostly everything I wanted to say. So thank you for listening to a brief history of international women, and let's all keep our grassroots effort for humanism, feminism, and activism. Let's keep that growing. And I do want to say one thing. I am a feminist, and for years I was always like, oh, you're a feminist, you know? Because before UN Women was UN Women, it was called UNIFEM. And I had just moved to California, and shortly after started UNIFEM. And people would say, ooh, what is that, fem? You know, what is that kind of thing? You know, rear back at me. And basically UNIFEM was the United Nations Development Fund for Women. That's what it was. But it became UN Women in 2010. It actually was ratified in the beginning of January 2011 because UNIFEM merged with 4 major training and organizations in the world of advancing women's lives. They all had to do with advancement. And at that time, UNIFEM, UN Women came into existence. It with its first president, which was Michelle Bachelet of Chile. So the other thing that the U.S. government has failed in is it gives the least amount of money towards UN women. France gives much more. Spain, even though it was in all that trouble financially, gave much more. For some reason, the budget for United Nations women in the U.S. is. So we're trying to save that, but it does keep us from being stronger in what we want to do. So again, I'm going to thank you, and I love being here. Thanks.
Thank you so much, CeCe. And so you guys are talking to women that this is their life passion. They don't get paid to come here. They don't get, I mean, they literally come here because they believe in the cause, they believe in you. So thank you. I want to give another round of applause for what you do.